All right, so we've got our rectangle page set up, and that's fantastic. We've got really two more pages to set up. The next one we're going to set up is the parallelogram page and screen, I should be calling it, because that's the language they're using in the App Lab. So the next move for us to make is to just dive into to starting that page. And you're going to see some very similar things happen in this screen as in the rectangle screen that we just completed setting up. So let's dive into that work and see what it looks like. First things first, we're going to bring a new screen in. So again, grab that screen tool from the toolbox, drag it over to the screen and just drop it in. That makes screen 6 pop in. And again, we're going to change the name from that screen 6 to something that makes much more sense, and that would be parallelogram rhombus screen. Wow, it helps if you can spell. Not going to do an image, not going to change a color. Again, those are choices you can change if you make those choices. But for me right now, I'm just going to leave it as it is so we can get to where we need to be. I've got an image I've got to put in, so I'm going to drag an image up upper left corner of that screen so I can get started there. I'm not going to leave it called image 7. Instead, I'm going to call that parallelogram rhombus dimension image. Seems like a meaningful name. And again, down to image, I'm going to click the choose button. I'm going to click upload file so that I can select the file. And again, this one, in this case, I'm looking for the parallelogram rhombus dimension, since that's what I named it. It's almost like a perfect match. I'm going to click open. There it is. Click choose, and that image pops in. I'm going to resize it, obviously, so we can see it a little bit better. I'm going to do some more resizing to make sure I maximize the viewable area of that image on my screen. So again, it's probably about as big as I can get it, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I feel like that's a good place to be. So again, we've got a button we're going to put in, just like we did in the other ones. Bottom right corner, that's left, so it's good we can tell directions. Bottom left corner, we're not going to call it button 6. We're going to call it parallelogram rhombus. Parallelogram rhombus back button. And on the button, I'm just going to make it say back. So again, that button eventually will navigate us back to our previous location, or the previous menu is what I meant to say there. Okay. Keep in mind, in the last time, we inserted a second button. We're going to do that again this time. And that second button will go in the bottom right corner this time. This time I actually mean right. And I didn't do a very good job of aligning it this time, so let's see if we can't do that better. And again, I'll change the name of this to parallelogram rhombus. Submit button. And the text will be submit. And keep in mind, we copied the color. So I'm going to come down here and change that background color and Control V. And that color pops in. Click on it, and you can see that that color went into my button. So now I've got that button, that same color button that I had on my previous screen. So again, I'm looking at that parallel build, making sure things are similar to what they look like in other places. It's a good just strategy to use when you're building an application. So I've got my image, I've got my two buttons that I'll need to use. Now I need text inputs for every one of the values I'll need. If we're looking at this image, we see we need the base, we need the height, and we need the sideline. So we need 3 input blocks here. We still need the 2 text areas as well. So we'll do similar things that we did previously for all of those inputs. So I got my text input, I'm going to bring into the middle of the page. I'm going to try and make that as centered as possible. And again, I'm going to label that, right? So what's that? This will be the parallelogram rhombus base input. And I'm going to put a label above it. I'm going to center the label a little bit more this time, just because of how it lines up with the other things in that window. And I'll name this parallelogram rhombus base label. And the text on this will be just that, base. Okay, so now it's telling the user that this is where you put the base. Another text input, and I'm going to try and line it up with that previous one and get the spacing just so. And that would be parallelogram rhombus. Height, sorry, wow, little brain freeze there. Label. No, input. That's the input block, and this will be the label. And again, I'm trying to make sure that I'm lining things up as well as possible. I didn't do a great job there. Might have to move it again. The text is going to be height, and the ID for that is parallelogram, rhombus, height label. Okay. So again, I've got those two things in there. I think I'm actually going to move the base label down a little bit so it's a little bit snugger, so that snugger, that's not a word, so that we've got similar construction on both of those. One more text input block, and again, I'll line that up and try and keep the space in between similar to the space in between that we see in the other example. And this one is going to be parallelogram rhombus. That's side input. And we'll put a label in on that. That will indicate that this is where you put the side measure. So the label, well, let's put the text in first. It's going to be side. And then the ID would be parallelogram, rhombus, side, label. Okay, that's a lot of typing. We've got almost everything that we need in this screen. The only thing that remains is we need our text area, and we need two text areas, one that is going to output our perimeter and the other one will output our area. So again, I'm going to do the same things I did previously. I'm dragging that text area in. I still can't see it, so I'm going to have to modify, but I'm changing the size of that to make it a little more square. I'm going to move that around a little bit so that when I do duplicate it, it'll look a little more like it's a half and half kind of division. I've got that about the size I want it and the location I want it, so I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'll drag that one over here, and again, try and line those up and make sure that they're spaced pretty well. Line it up. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. So I forgot to label that, so I'm clicking on the first one of those, and it's coming in as text area 3. I'm going to call that parallelogram rhombus a perimeter output. And this one, the other one will be called parallelogram rhombus area output. Okay, and with that, I've got my, there we go. I've got my 6th screen set up. My parallelogram rhombus screen is set up and ready to be coded for use. So I've got one screen left to set up, to design, and then I should be ready to code this application so that it works. So we're in a good place.